Um, today I would like to talk about just do like a check-in and the clean staff has kind of been talking about what our vision is for clean calls in the post-pandemic world and we're always thinking about how we can serve the clean community and so I was thinking today we could have just like a little brainstorm about what we like about the clean calls and see if we can brainstorm any ideas about how to make them more actionable or if the frequency of the clean calls is beneficial to people. um since we've been doing this for a long time, just kind of check in about how they're working for us. um but I have a feeling that we don't all know each other, so maybe we can go around and just do a little introduction. um and maybe we're excited, one thing about our work that we're excited about or proud of that's happened in the past few months. How does that sound? Cool. I can go first. So I'm Gina Fiorelli Dronlow. I coordinate these calls. I do know all of you, but one thing that I am excited about is that we are, oh yeah, good point, Katie. If there are any other ideas people want to talk about, that sounds good. So one thing that I'm excited about is that we're going to be releasing the next call for proposals for the Excel Summit and doing working groups again, another cycle of that this fall. So I'm working on getting that together right now and hoping to release it soon. So that's one thing that I'm excited about. And yeah. Hey, Wendy, we're just doing introductions and talking about one thing in our work that we're excited about that's happened or is happening. Um, Cass is Cass is next to me, so I'll send it over to her.
Thanks so much. Introductions. We're doing intros, right? I didn't misunderstand that. Awesome. I'm Cass. I am with Action for the Climate Emergency, working on our Climate Our Future, which is a clean partner. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm based out of Tampa, Florida. Um, yeah, just intro or anything with a clean call structure. I'm pretty satisfied with the clean call structure. There are some times where it's not necessarily relevant to the work that I'm doing, which is okay. I'm happy to be a fly on the wall. So yeah.
Uh, Danelle is next to me too. I'll send it over to her.
Hi, I'm Danelle Hogan, and I'm based in Tucson, Arizona, and I work for the Water Center for Systems Thinking, and we're focused on systems thinking. And I guess I'm most excited about just work we're doing internationally, and then also we have a amazing systems thinking cohort for teachers from anywhere across the US that'll be starting next month, which will be a cool, exciting opportunity.
How about Jim?
Great, thanks, Gina. Hi, everyone. Jim Callahan from Mobile Climate Science Labs, also schools, in particular Bard High School, Early College in DC. I think one thing our class is up and running now, and it's got a good turnout. This is an elective course, and it's pretty full. And we're also getting it essentially all over the school. Climate change is finding its way in and working together. So that's something we're building. I think one thing I would mention is when the new version of of the climate literacy guide comes out, we will be among those that will assure to the whole country that is not an aspirational document of, wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be nice if this happened? It's already happening. It's happening well in specific schools. There's photos, there's images, there's students you can talk to. It's really happening. And in fact, these schools are going far beyond the climate literacy guide, but using it as a base. So I think that's something that's an achievement for all of us and want to use that. And over time, maybe in the structure of the calls and things, is I certainly want to make sure that I'm checking in with each of the different programs that gets represented here. Because we also have a very specific thing. We have a full year on climate change from many different angles. So Danelle, I want to learn more about water systems, how you teach it, because system thinking is important and water is very important. Of course, Gina and Katie, you know, I've already raised the idea of how does CLEAN feel about students using CLEAN in terms of, you know, that of, because now our students are teachers of climate literacy. They teach it in their school, they teach it outside the school. And so we're asking them to, you know, within this year, they will pick subjects. So in other words, they will go through the CLEAN resources and say, what would they like to have as a focus on? You know, this is a traditional technique, right? When you've got hundreds of potential topics, let the students choose what they want to focus on, as long as we're covering the general groundwork, right? We're not just leaving it up to them to figure out what the climate literacy guide is. Anyway, those are examples. NCSC, ACE, everybody, UCAR always, always UCAR. You know, it's like what are we missing that we could be pulling in to you know, be working together. So thanks very much. And how about I'll just, it could be anybody, but let's go with Wendy on this one. Wendy, I'm asking, did you want to say something? If not,
Oh,
I'll go
sorry,
ahead
I
with
didn't hear who you said. Yes, I'm Wendy Johnson from the National Center for Science Education. I am excited. We finished up revising our climate change lessons, and I'm going back to a tool that we developed called DataWise that is basically for like identifying misinformation and disinformation. So for the past couple of weeks, I've just been like thinking about how to support teachers in using that and looking at examples in media and like why this is so important. And thinking a lot about how even within climate education, like it's super important that everyone know certain baseline things about, you know, the greenhouse effect and carbon dioxide, but like scientific information changes. So how our bigger focus needs to be on like helping people understand why they should trust science and how they know good science when they see it versus, you know, misinformation and disinformation. So I've been thinking a lot about that lately. Melissa, did you go already?
No, I hopped in a little bit late, so sorry about that. Hi, everyone. I'm Melissa from UCAR Center of Science Education, just out of Boulder, Colorado. We just did a workshop for teachers on Saturday. It was a group of teachers from Colorado Springs that wanted to learn more about teaching about climate change and climate solutions. So they got on there was about 25 of them. They got on a bus and came up to see us in Boulder, and that was pretty fun and was received pretty well. And in our work, we've been trying to be able to point teachers to resources to learn about climate actions that are like local to them in their region and how they can use that information to help, you know, instill hope and maybe inspire students and maybe encourage action in their area. So that's kind of what we focused on. So that'll be the end of PD that we do for a little while here, and just also working on projects developing curriculum and things like that. Does anybody else still need to go? I apologize for not knowing.
Frank, yeah.
Great. Go for it, Frank.
So I'm Frank Granshaw from Portland, Oregon, and I feel like I'm talking sort of between jobs at this point because I'm a retired geoscience instructor from here in Portland who's has been teaching basically climate science to non-science majors at Portland State University. However, like many universities and small colleges, there's been a downturn in enrollment. And so have sort of been shut out from teaching that class for a little while because of the fact probably for the foreseeable future because of needing that class for full timers. At the same time, I just got off the one hat that I still wear is involved with Quaker Earth Care Witness, and they've been the ones responsible for giving me the credentials to attend several of the COPs. And just got off a meeting with them this morning where we were talking about reforming our UN working group. And part of the discussion in that was how to get Quaker communities more connected in with what's happening at the COPs, particularly since we send delegates. And the only other thing I would throw out here is I had sent out an email via the CLEAN Network and a few others regarding a project that I've been working on for several years of trying to provide a online portal for remote engagement with the UN, with UN climate events. And particularly that email was how to pass the torch, because as you can tell from the gray hairs, I don't move as fast as I used to. And it really is a project that needs to be taken up by a wider community. And so anyway, if we have any time to talk about that, that would be great today.
Absolutely, Frank. Yeah, that would be really good to talk about, and might even could be part of the larger discussion about clean calls and the clean network. So yeah, we should definitely talk about that. Katie, did you want to go?
Yeah, I haven't introduced. Is everybody else gone? Making sure. I missed some of it too with my headphones not working. Can you hear me?
Yep, everyone went too, so you're good.
Cool. They seem to be working okay. Good. I think I got them fixed. I'm Katie Boyd. I am the Clean Program Manager, and so I'm based at CEEE, Series CEEE, one of NOAA's cooperative institutes, and within that, a Center for Education, Engagement, and Evaluation. And we host CLEAN. So yeah, nice to be here working with Gina on this project, and nice to see you all today. I agree, Gina. I think those are a good couple. Oh, that's the other thing. Sorry, the thing I'm excited about. I'm just coming back to work from being on leave for a little while, so I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed actually at the moment. I'm trying to catch up on stuff. But I'm trying to think of like what is exciting right now. Well, they did the review camp while I was on leave, which is really cool. So we're like working on ingesting like, gosh, Gina, I don't even know. It's like 60, 70
I was gonna say about 60. Yeah.
Reflection, so that's really exciting right now. And then this group, if you might remember, we did a social network analysis on the CLEAN network a while back, a couple of years ago actually now, and we've been working on that analysis. I presented on it on a CLEAN call. Gosh, was that almost 2 years ago now? Maybe it was just 1 year ago. But we've been working on trying to get that published in a paper, and we're very close, I think. I'm working on revisions for it now, and it's pretty minor revisions this round. So I will share that with the group once it's actually published, hopefully in the next couple months, but we will see. So yeah, those are the two things I'm kind of excited about right now.
Cool. Yeah, thanks, Katie. We're all very excited to have you back. I am personally very, very excited to have Katie back. So that's great. And I was kind of starting to say this, but for those of you that joined after I started the call, or started the recording, I was just explaining that the CLEAN staff has been talking about the CLEAN calls and the CLEAN network, and just wanting to make sure that we're continuing to support everyone in the network as best as we can. And mostly in the sense of making sure that these calls are still serving everyone. And particularly in a post-pandemic world. So just for some like additional context and history, if you don't know, these calls, these weekly Zoom calls have been happening every single Tuesday for, I think, 11 or 12 years now.
I think longer than that.
Longer than that.
Like 2010 or 11. Frank would know,
Okay.
but yeah, over 10 years. I know. Whether it's
If
like,
Frank
I
was
think it
here,
might
he
be
would.
like 13. Yeah.
Yeah, if Frank was here, he would know exactly. But they've been happening for a long time, every single week. And we've talked about in the past, we've talked about the fact that having them at this time kind of excludes classroom teachers, or that if you can't make this time, then it really kind of it sucks because there's no other option to join. So timing is something that we've talked about before, but one thing that we continue to come back to every time we do kind of like a check-in is people do really like the consistency and knowing no matter what phase they're in with their job, or if they leave and come back to more climate work, that these calls are always happening at 1 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays. So there is something to be said about consistency. And I do think that during COVID, people were really, really excited to have these calls because we were just starting to do it. People were starting to rely on Zoom a little bit more for connection and more personal engagement. Now everyone is very zoomed out. So I think, yeah, it's just time to maybe do another check-in. And this is probably an ongoing conversation. I'm not saying that anything is changing today, but for folks that are here often or not here that often, like, what do we think works about these calls? Is there anything different that you would like to see? Keeping in mind that Clean has not a great amount of not a large amount of capacity to do tons of extra things. We do we do wish that there was, like, all the time in the world to be able to do stuff, but we just kind of have to be strategic with the time that we have and the capacity that we have. So yeah,
Can I
that's
throw in
that's
a
where
little
I'm coming
more?
from with it.
Can I
What?
throw in just like one more extra context?
Please.
And I think you set it up really well in terms of what we've been talking about here and there. But also, before you joined, Patrick was the coordinator of a lot of the calls, and we sort of a few years ago, before the pandemic, implemented the every other week doing the presentation and the informal discussion. And so I think that was another piece to kind of just revisit, because that's only been the structure for the last couple of years. So we also wanted to see if, like, does that work for folks, or do we want more than that? And then Gina and I were also talking about, like, the Excel group seems like they were pretty successful last year and all had to meet on their own time. Like, is there any amount where we can try to weave some of that work into Clean calls, and thinking about, like, do we want to add beyond presentations and informal discussions, do we want to add more like working group style calls, or is it too many meetings and we need to, like, reduce the amount? Kind of some thoughts around just the structure, and wanted to get a sense of what other people liked and didn't like first. For your brainstorming pleasure, you can see a baby with a penguin on his hand.
So anytime needing to speak up as a duo, please do. I think, let's see, all of the subjects that that people have brought up, I think should all get attention here. I mean, I'm all for it, and I could comment on each one. I think I'd want to add in and somewhat distinct from the question of the timing, because that is a question of what category of educator or person working with education or literacy can we reach. there, what is clear is that there are different programs or schools or, other forms of action of things going on that are happening that are not showing up at the Clean Network. And I think we want to invite them and do it in a way that they want to be here and things. So I can definitely cite specific examples and things like that. But I think it's a great thing that Clean, more than any other one organization, one other gathering, has been the place where you come together to find out what's going on in climate education, their various terms. And there are others now, but I think they should see this is an area where, what is it? It's a win-win situation. It's not a zero-sum game. In other words, if Clean gets attention, it means X, Y, and Z. They're being upstaged. It doesn't work that way. And Clean plays a kind of a very, we're not just one thing bunch. So I think there's kind of a one of, doesn't it make sense for us to get together and cross connect? I don't think there's I can't think of among them that there's a valid argument why, well, we wouldn't want to come to Clean. We wouldn't want to be there, even to give a presentation or to give our latest thing, because that's our competition. I think that's not us. And I think, but yet we're not currently getting some people that really should be here. So just adding that in. Okay. That's nobody's fault. That's nobody's fault. I just think we want to recognize and make sure that's something we make, we're making an effort on.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. We've heard that from several people, like Gina said. I mean, just time zones even. Like there was a partner in Hawaii that joined an Excel summit one year that was like, I can't really join because it's so early in the morning for me, And then we've talked about moving it later to engage teachers more, who are like, they can't join in the middle of the day like this. But then I'll just throw out there that I feel like every time we've talked about moving the time or whatever, there has been pushback on that too. The people, as Gina said, some people like the consistency of it, So I'm just gonna throw that out there that like we're totally open to changing the time. And I think James, you make a really good point as to why, and we've heard this before, and so maybe it's worth revisiting that again. And I'm just going to put out there that the reason we haven't is because every time we're like, yeah, that's a great idea, people want that, and then like we get some pushback on it too. So, but I do wonder if it's like worth doing more of a systematic poll versus just like, to see on something like that. But anyways, I'm just going to put.
So I don't know that I've got any suggestions to throw in, just some reflections as kind of an intermittent participant in this. I will say that particularly during 2020 and 2021, CLEAN was particularly great for me in the sense that it was a connection with people outside of the folks I was seeing in my classes, which were also on Zoom. And I sort of see the CLEAN call not as a do all for my involvement, but it's just one piece of it. And the piece that the CLEAN call provides me is a way of connecting with people outside my little bubble, which as we're moving past, as we've moved out of the COVID realm, the sort of reaction of Zoom's fatigue is, oh, we're just going to talk to people in our own local areas. Well, that unfortunately doesn't work well when you want to make connections with people in other parts of the world. And yeah, at this point I'm rambling, so maybe I better shut up.
I do think that I wasn't part of CLEAN during COVID, but I've seen, it's not just the Zoom fatigue, it's also like for me, when I'm not here, it's because there's some pressing thing at work, right? There's like, oh, this project, this thing, right? I have to schedule a meeting during that time, or I have to finish this. And I do think the world is going back more and more to that, which is unfortunate because I had hoped that we would learn something from COVID about like the importance of slowing down and just connecting with people, right? So I do think that's, I'm guessing part of it is just like so many pressures to do so many things that people have. And yet to me, that seems to be the point of this group is like, we don't all want to be like running around trying to do it all. And I think that's what James is always pushing us to of like, wait, what are other people doing that we can like, whether it's work together or I can use your stuff, right? That we have this tendency to like, I'm too busy for that, but really maybe this is a way that you sort of less busy, you know, and coordinate efforts. But I don't know necessarily, like, especially as I think about teachers, you know, and we talk so much about supporting them and what do they need, but their biggest thing they say is time. So I don't know how you solve that because I do think it would be really helpful to have teachers, you know, like in the call telling us what they need and like giving feedback on the kind of, you know, things that we talk about. So I do think that maybe a systematic poll and maybe the time does need to rotate, but maybe there's like a way to be consistent even within that, right? If like the first meeting of the month is always this time, right? Second meeting of the month is this time or something like that. NCSE saw it even with like a much smaller group. We started to have two different teacher ambassador meetings at two different times. And in some ways it split the group. So that wasn't great because we weren't like all together, but it got more people like able to come and feel like we were being responsive to them, which is also part of it, right? Like, do they feel like, you know, to James's point, like, do people feel like we want more people to come, or does it feel like that's just kind of this club, you know, that doesn't really want new members?
I think that's a really good point, Wendy. I have a question around like your ambassadors, because I've always struggled, like you said, teachers are so pressed for time that even when we do things to try to sort of align better with the times they can join, they still struggle to join because it's just so hard. Like once the teaching day is done, to like join another thing, spend another hour or whatever, you know. For your ambassador meetings, do you find teachers have that problem as well? Do they get stipends for being part of that program, or like, what is there some sort of incentive for them to join those meetings that they actually come to them?
We did not do stipends, and tellingly, we actually have been in like a reset mode. We haven't had ambassador meetings since the spring. So that shows you that like, you know, same kind of issues, although some of that is like reorganization with a new executive director. I think in general, they responded mostly to feeling needed, right? So it's one thing to be like, oh, I'm going to listen and maybe I'll get something out of it. And it's another thing to feel like you're making a difference. So, you know, these things we're talking about, like listening to teachers, what might really, you know, get them to come is like that sense of like input. Again, I don't know exactly how you structure that, but we found, because we'd always kind of like, you know, CLEAN does send out like, here's what we're going to be talking about this week. They were always very excited when we were like, we have this new idea or this new thing and we need your feedback. We need your input. Like way more would show up than other kinds of topics.
Wendy, I definitely totally want to like write 4 underlines under that. I think that's a big difference in a lot of ways. And same thing with students, right? If we're just talking at them all the time, what's this? I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm just here because I have to. Oh, we're all engaged and it's social, and you're actually paying attention to what I have to say once in a while. Huge difference.
Cass?
Yeah, I'd love to echo Wendy's sentiment and also share that like our Climate Our Future Live was a phenomenal program that we had had for, you know, almost 2 decades at ACE. And we are no longer able to provide that because teachers can no longer figure out how to squeeze it into their day since it's so time conducive to like figure out how to plot out a presenter at schools now. And this was something that we had done throughout the US for background. We'd had a 40-minute presentation where it was free to have a presenter go to a school, give, we had a teacher incentive program where like teachers could get like up to $25 per 150 students. We'd also had a $500 scholarship we awarded to one student who saw our presentation. We would give out $125 gift card to a student in the audience. There were so many incentives that we would incorporate, but the problem is educators just simply do not have time, and there's so many barriers to entry for the educators that I think as a community who's really engaged in figuring out how to get away from being laborious, we have to like figure out how to navigate and circumvent, because it's really becoming so difficult for them and so arduous for them, and they don't have any capacity, and it's time for the leaders to like really start talking about like what we can do beyond just like throwing resources at them, because if they can't easily grab them, then like who are we serving?
I'm going to just put in some 2 cents on the time and all that, knowing that I'm speaking about a subset of teachers and maybe a small subset of teachers. So I'm not saying, in my points here, it is not to say the other points aren't valid and often, probably more often more valid. I seek out, and people seek out me among teachers who want to make climate change a serious subject. They want to go in depth. This is going to be their subject. And typically the most common motivation is, I want to pick a subject that my students care about. I want to speak to something that I know that matters to them, that they're interested in. I want to then get into this because if I'm going to teach social science and I'm going to teach language arts, if I'm going to teach science, if I've got their attention, they get a chance to go in depth into a subject that learns how you actually speak and how you actually relate to people. If you're just jumping around from subject to subject and they don't care about any of them, that's a whole different world. So what I'm getting at is, when I encounter a teacher who wants to do that, they're willing to put in time. I mean, they stress me. Like, I have a thing of like, if you want to talk, we can talk anytime. And by the way, there's always a thing. You want to talk by email, you want to talk by phone, you want to talk by Zoom. 90% of the times I want to talk by Zoom. So there's a kind of question that Zoom has allowed us a face-to-face conversation, if it's engaged. But these teachers they have the time. I put it in contrast that some of the times we'll get something established at a school, and the school has adopted this subject, and then that teacher leaves for some other reason. It has nothing to do with climate change, but they leave. And the school assigns another teacher to fill in for them. And I get very quickly and they might even hire a teacher to do the job. And then we get, how much does that teacher really want to do it? So we get some that are kind of not so much, and they don't have a lot of time. Then we get someone who's assigned it and they don't want to teach it. And time is the excuse that they give. I don't have time. One teacher I had was assigned to come talk to me so we could align our work on climate change, and told by the head of the school, you got to come talk to him. And she would not do it and want to do it. And finally she came in one day and she said, I want to talk. I've been told by this guy that I'm supposed to talk to you. Well, I don't have time for that. And she started to walk out the door. Okay. So she had done what he said, is I came to talk to you, but I don't want to talk to you. I don't have time. She turns around at the door and started to talk about something she wanted to talk about for a half hour. She had the time. She just doesn't want to teach climate change, right? So it's just knowing that there's this type of thing. And I think, again, I'm not saying that for everybody. There's a different bit of a realm of, I have seen the difference of, man, when a teacher wants to teach it and a school is allowing them to do it, the time it totally stresses my week, because I've got to spend a lot of time with them and I love it. And then I've seen, like, time is just simply used as an excuse not to do anything. So I don't know, just putting that into the realm of, I guess when we're dealing with where the schools and teachers are looking to really be among the leaders in the country, you get other things come out. Thanks.
Well, how do we convince them that it's worth their time? Because I think that is really, and I'm not asking for an answer right now. I think again, that is our responsibility is like what are we willing to put in as a community, as an organization or a variety of organizations to convince them that this is necessary, it's effective. It's not just necessary, but it's effective and it will be beneficial to them in the education that they want to do. Because if this isn't something that they're taught in other PD, professional development or whatever, how do they know that this is going to be worth the time since they have such little of it? It's basically like time is like we all, like, let's say I give a teacher 5 coins and I'm saying all of your coins are going to have to be spent on this, but you don't know if it's actually going to work. I don't think that they're willing to do that. Sure, some of them have time, but like prolifically in the areas that our organization spent a lot of time in, which are like the key states, the key regions, often not necessarily like welcoming to climate change, areas where there's like a huge population of low income Title I schools, that's not necessarily like potentially the best use of their time. And I'm also a parent, so like I see it from a different perspective. Like my kids go to an amazing public school, right? An IB A-rated public school that's like just 10 minutes down the road. We are so fortunate. But even in their amazing school, there's teacher attrition that is so prolific that like they are so lucky if they can get a substitute teacher if a teacher decides in December that they're not returning, and that happens all the time. This is the reality of the situation, is we lost phenomenal educators. So we have to convince them that this is worth their time and it's going to be effective to the storytelling that they want to bring into their classrooms.
Go ahead, Frank.
So Jim, I'm curious, what did she want to talk about for half an hour?
Well, okay, and just get that I don't want to be too specific because this is not about calling anybody out, and
Okay.
it also loses the generality if I get too specific. The teacher is a teacher who liked to teach things that had a certain way to teach things, and things that I think are important. I don't think they were unimportant, but they had a favorite way to teach that they've been teaching for 20 years, and they've done it at other schools and the whole thing, and this is their thing, and this is what they're known for. And that's what they like to teach, and that's what they talked about. And there's some overlap of things that I teach or the way, or things I care about, even just say photography. I mean, obviously, in order to convey what it is we do and everything, photography is important as partner action, so on like that. So there was, that was an overlap on thing, and that was the thing the person wanted to talk about. And I think actually, I mean, I'm not sure. That's one of, I've kind of had more conversations with them. It's not like I don't talk to the person, but I kind of actually read it. It was making the point, I have time, but not for this subject, right? I mean, I think it was, I don't think it, I don't, this is not a stupid person. This is a person who knows how to communicate, that you would come in and say, I don't have time for this, walk to the door, turn around and prove that there was plenty of time. Was, I mean, I guess if I go a little bit further, is the things that this teacher and the other teachers do are not foreign to any of you, I'm sure. I would rather teach a subject that is easy and not controversial and not hard. This teacher really doesn't like the fact that in my part of this school's teaching, the students learn to be teachers themselves, and they teach to the other classes. That is something that teacher finds absolutely revolting, because you can't control the class if the students are allowed to come up and be teachers, and for everything to not be focused on that teacher for the day, for the hour, but on the other students. That is something that's verboten. We don't do that. I don't want to have anything to do with that.
Yeah, I was just thinking about some things that Cass was saying in response to what you said, and thinking about Catherine Hayhoe's common approach that she talks about a lot, which is trying to link up the issue of climate to what people do feel is important, what they do have time for.
I'll just jump in with a couple thoughts. I do think having a time that is accessible to teachers would be nice. This certainly is not that time. And so maybe considering an every other week, or you could keep it on Tuesdays, but do one at 1 and maybe one at 4 Pacific or something like that, just so that teachers really could come. And we have found multiple times does help encourage teachers to participate. I also feel like there are many, many things coming out of the pandemic that are very different with both teachers and students. And if you appeal to some of those issues that are coming up in terms of like students aren't engaging with each other, but if you lens what's happening in these meetings specifically for teachers to address things like that, like how to increase student discourse in your classroom, I feel like you will catch more teachers. How to reduce anxiety, specifically through the lens of climate, and so on and so forth. So I think there's many things that teachers are dealing with that are specific to still not recovering or things being normal, whatever that means, after the pandemic that could help bring teachers in. But I think whatever you do, it has to be something they could use tomorrow. And that is what really gets our teachers to come to our stuff is, they know that they're going to get something that they can use tomorrow or try out.
Closer to the beginning of the discussion, Melissa, you said rotating quarterly maybe. Did you mean rotating topics or like the
The
format quarterly?
meeting schedule.
Okay.
So if you, because consistency is nice, but maybe if it was consistent but changed only quarterly, so it's not just like, wait, what month is it? So which day or which week is it? But if you targeted one quarter having a meeting at times when it's after school time, educators could make it,
Mm,
or one quarter targeting a time that's better for West Coast folks, and
mhm.
whatever. You could just strategically, maybe after some polling, figure out time chunks. You're never going to get everybody, but if you rotated it quarterly, it might encourage kind of a mixture of more people being able to attend, and then we could hear from them and share with them and stuff.
True. And quarterly is infrequent enough that hopefully people would get them kind of like get into a routine with it a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's an interesting thought. Katie, do you have any other thoughts too? Oh, Cass has her hand up. Yeah, Cass, go ahead.
Hey, thanks. I think that we just have to be clear if we want to draw the teachers here, like that there's something in it for them, which I know goes without saying, because obviously CLEAN provides really amazing resources for educators, but like we have to like invite them and tell them that there's a seat at the table, because to everybody's point, like meeting fatigue is so high. And again, like just being in these spaces, it's like, oh, what's different about this? Do I really want to go? Blah, blah, blah. So I think it's like, I don't know, like a mini rebrand. Like, this is what we're doing, and this is what we want to hear. Like, just give them a seat at the table and offer something for them. It doesn't have to be like monetary or anything. It can just be like, we really want to hear from you.
Yeah, more intentional inviting of educators. Yeah, that's a good thought.
Yeah, because there are things where they're like sharing what they're doing. I think what James is talking about, there are tons of teachers that we could invite in to share what they're doing that we can learn from as well. And then there's also like, resources that they might need, and things like that are more along like professional development. Teachers are actually interested in like talking to other teachers who care about what they do too, especially because of these pressures in schools, right? And if you really care about climate, but the other teachers in your department don't, a lot of times you feel really like, what can I do? So I think Cass's point about like being clear, and it doesn't mean that there's necessarily like only one thing, but like, per meeting, so that people are showing up kind of knowing what they can contribute or get out of this. that, you know, makes it feel meaningful. And some people are looking for that thing they can use tomorrow. I totally agree. Teachers love that. There are teachers who are more looking to share what they do and network and get ideas, you know, and
So Wendy and others, how do you feel about if teachers are invited in some form of this, that teachers, actually in school teachers, are invited to come talk about what they're doing, some form of presentation and the whole thing, and that we're really encouraging other people, not only discussion with people who are bringing resources and you know, specialists from the outside and so on, but also that other teachers to able to have that discussion. Is that something that we would be comfortable seeing happen? By the way, to give an example within that, one that I think is crying out that to run by you all, one of the things that happened this summer was the Climate and Equity Institute, which was sponsored by Turk and funded by the MacArthur Foundation. And it was in its third year, where there's 10 teachers from around the country who are doing significant work on climate change. And they gave presentations and they met with each other for a week. One of my colleagues, you've seen in some of these pictures, was one of them. That would be that would clearly be a place that we could invite both Turk to say, would some of your folks want to come and talk, or how would you feel about having some of your fellows be invited to come and speak with CLEAN, and then work out the details. But would that be okay with CLEAN? Would we be getting any pushback? Wait a second, this is not a place for teachers to be talking to teachers.
Katie, you had unmuted earlier. Were you gonna say something?
I was just going to say, I think Cass and Wendy and others have brought up some really good points around trying to engage teachers. And that's a topic that has come up quite a bit when we've broached this in the past, and we haven't really ever actually gone down that path. So I was just going to say to Gina that, like, that's a good thing to maybe consider. Melissa brought up a good point around maybe how we might better be able to kind of shift the timing and stuff like that to do that. So yeah, I was just going to sort of say, I think these are really good thoughts and ideas, and something that has been discussed before, but we've never really managed to do it. I think it would be worth thinking about ways to, better engage with teachers when it's being called. Sounds like what I'm hearing today, which is, and there's some good thoughts on how to do that, I think, better than what we've heard before or tried before.
Go for it, Cass.
Yeah, we have like 40,000 teachers who have opted into our newsletter. We send this newsletter, and we would be happy to share if, like, you did deviate in this direction and say, hey, teachers, CLEAN wants you to join their call. Like, there's lots of different ways. I think many of our organizations or your partner organizations can support that.
And it might start with a survey, you know, Katie was talking about time, but also, like, you know, what do teachers want? What would be helpful? What kind of topics, like, do they want to share climate action things that they're doing? Are they mostly looking for resources? I always find it helpful to, like, you know, have a survey before I do workshops. You know, I ask, like, what challenges do you have related to teaching climate? And it's so helpful to say, this is why we're doing this. And, like, I put the challenges up there and say, like, people said this, and a lot of them are things that we already do because we, like, know those challenges, right? But to show that I'm listening to what you need and I'm trying to help you with that. At the same time, I think all of us who are, like, trying to support climate education have a lot to learn from teachers, you know, that it's not just about what we can give them.
Yeah, we can give them everything, but we need to know what they need, because we'll just be throwing spaghetti at a wall.
And they're hearing, right? Like, they know it's not just, like, what they need, but they're like, they're hearing from students, they're thinking of things that even only being 1 year out of the classroom, right, that I'm not thinking of. Like with our data wise, I was so like, okay, this is how, like, we know that so much of what students encounter on social media is just plain wrong. So like we want to help them sift through that. We made this tool, and like the first time we presented it at NSTA, teachers brought up, what if they start applying this to the AP test? And I was like, I never thought of that. I taught AP bio, right? Like I've been a teacher, but like because my immediate thing isn't like, I'm going to give this to a kid and it's actually going to like backfire, right? Like I wouldn't be thinking like that because again, it's like not, it's about like where they are. And I was like, oh, you're right. And so it's brought up this bigger issue of like really helping students think about when they need which strategy, right? If I'm critiquing the data from another group in my class, they don't have any reason to lie to me, right? And so I'm really going to focus on like, does the data match their claim and like that kind of aspect. But when I'm same, and that's like for an AP test, right? Like the AP standards have nothing about identifying misinformation and disinformation. So like they're going to see, can I understand the science and can I explain it? Where I'm going to have a different focus when I'm looking at something that's on TikTok. And teachers are going to like, just spot those things so much more quickly because they have this different focus of like, yes, I care about climate action, but also kids have to pass the AP test. And like Donnell was saying, like getting kids to talk to each other right now is so hard. It was like my main challenge as well is everything had shifted to student discourse and that's what I want. And I know that's the best way to teach. And kids will straight up say, I don't want to talk to them. I don't care what their name is. And they'll say like the most horrible things about the person sitting right next to them. And you're like, oh crap, all of my like ideas for like climate action is collective and this is what we do together is like just out the window when that's my challenge.
Wendy specifically, but everybody would, in kind of addressing the question over what would teachers want to say, or what would they want if they came together, right? So taking it, for example, they would like to hear from certain resources, or they would like to, um, and I should say, and they would like to talk about what they're doing in classes or their challenges and things. It would be a change for us to be going out actively to say, we want to hear from you. And there's going to be, and we're making time for educators to have a voice and to actually speak this. There'll be other times when you're invited to get basically a PD where we're going to say, this is a resource and this is how you use it and this whole thing. But this time we're more going to open up to you on it. And as long as we're not getting any pushback, then I think it would kind of sort itself out a little bit. We would find that out. Another one I mentioned, maybe sometimes I know I say some things that I can understand why others might not feel they should say these things. But we're doing a lot realizing that one way or another, things are going to be very, very different in November. And it is, what outcome are you preparing for, or which outcomes are you preparing for? One way or another, we're preparing for the outcomes in November, right? And maybe if it'll drag out to December, who knows? We don't know where this one's going to go. But we can have a different, okay, if it goes this way, this is what happens, this goes this way. But some of these things could not have to take effect until after November, right? So, I mean, if there's a thing of, nope, we don't want to be seen giving voices to teachers, if it goes one way, then all right, then that won't happen. But if it does go away where there isn't going to be a lot of pushback about actually teaching climate change and not just having principles about it or resources about it, then we'll be ready. And that happens. So I mean, I'm kind of recognizing this is a big thing I get teaching teachers. Some of them, it's like, I've got whole schools that are basically going into, we are preparing for the worst, and we want to make sure that we're not a targeted school if the worst happens. So they're basically just we don't want anything that will make us, you know, seen as a place that's not already signed up for whatever the, you know, is going to come down from the administration. So anyway, just a kind of a thought on this, that we can be looking at things that can be later implemented or not later implemented.
We are almost at the top of the hour, so I'm gonna stop us here. But I do appreciate all of the thoughts and the discussion. It sounds like we're all pretty passionate about serving teachers best. I know that that's not new information, but it's just good to hear thoughts and different perspectives. So I'm gonna wrap us up, but it's good to talk about this higher level thinking and about our network. And yeah, I'm not saying that anything's gonna change tomorrow, but this is a good time, I think, for us to check in and make sure that we're on the same page, and more to come on this, I think. So thanks everyone for your thoughts.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Thanks.